now listening to Thunder Radio, the podcast of the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Centre.
So welcome to Thunder Radio. We are here today with Nicole Mang. She is the multimedia developer here at the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Centre. And maybe before we begin, she's here to talk about a very exciting and special project. But I'll just have her describe a little bit of what she does here at the center.
Hi, Kim.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Yes, I work at the center. I'm a multimedia developer. I do video primarily. So I'm doing educational videos with our specialists here. I'm traveling to communities. I'm documenting events. I work on the podcast with you. I'm on the behind the scenes every month. And
so this is a bit new, you being in front of the microphone.
Yep. So hopefully everything works.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. And so I've been with Center since 2004. So quite a while.
Good. Well, I'm excited to talk to you today about this project that you're working on based on Wahbung. So for those who might not know what that is, first I'll have you talk about what is Wahbung.
What is Wahbung, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a project that came to us from AMC originally, from Kathy Canoe and Janet Fontaine. They had created a document called Women of Leblanc, which was acknowledging the women involved in the creation of the Wahbung position paper. So the Wahbung position paper was written in 1971 as a response to the Trudeau's government's white paper, which essentially was written to abolish the status of Indians, as they were known at the time as. So the chiefs of Manitoba banded together under the direction of Grand Chief Dave Crushane and the Manitoba Indian Brotherhood and created the position paper, Wahbung Our Tomorrows, which outlined a direction for their future that they saw as a future for themselves. And the position paper is now widely acknowledged as very influential. And here at MFNERC, it's very important to our organization, as it was basically why we exist. The idea was really originally Janet and Kathy approached us to create a book. And then we sort of talked about having some multimedia aspects involved, and that's basically how I became involved in the project.
Okay, great. So, and just quickly, the Wahbung document covers a multiple of different areas, not just education, but
culture, treaties and Aboriginal rights, land, hunting rights, housing, health. That was a big section that people worked on, I know, because we interviewed them for this project. So it was a whole vision. Like, it's sort of for everything. Yeah.
Okay, so you were approached to do this project. It has been, from what I understand, a very sort of interesting journey to find information, to gather stories. It turned into also a video that we'll talk about as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll start with, there was some historical footage that you wanted to include as part of the project. So maybe we'll start there.
Right. So at first, I wasn't too sure what the video would be as far as an accompaniment to this proposed book. I thought perhaps it might just be interviews, talking head style stuff. You know what I mean? Like just pretty cut and dry. It wasn't until we started talking to Kathy and Janet a little bit about any possibility of related information that they mentioned that they remembered seeing film footage from the early 70s. And I was like, well, I need this footage. This sounds like it's relevant. It was, from what they recalled, it was of the events that took place surrounding Wahbung. So it became basically my single-minded vision to try to locate this film footage that they recalled. Unfortunately, it didn't seem like it existed. It basically was missing, or I couldn't even really confirm that it did in fact exist. So we did contact Monique Warniak, who works at the Winnipeg Public Library, who has been on this podcast. And we asked her to do some digging for us and see if she could find anything. And she did find an article from 1972 that outlined a premiere that happened at the Winnipeg Art Gallery that was of a film called Wahbung Our Tomorrows, same name. And it had a bunch of details about, that the Manitoba Indian Brotherhood was involved, the film crew, the producer, all this information. So we knew that it existed, and it was just unfortunately titled the exact same name as the well-known document, Wahbung Our Tomorrows, which made searching for any evidence of it very difficult, because obviously the two items were then, crossing paths, and really the only information out there was on the book. So it seemed like it was just kind of crazy. Like there was just like nothing. We talked to people. It was, people who were involved at the time, and the person who made the film, which we can talk about.
Yes, of course. His name was mentioned in the article that you just mentioned that Monique had found. So maybe tell us a bit about how you found him and what he's like.
Yeah, so that was kind of the main clue that we ended up following was the name of this film producer named Bill McCaughey. And he ran this company called Film Factory Productions in the 70s. And he was hired by the Manitoba Indian Brotherhood to produce this film. And basically, from our understanding, the film was sort of documenting not just Wahbung, but the entirety of the centennial year, which was 1971. So 1871 was the signing of Treaties 1 and 2. 71 was a commemoration, and it wasn't a celebration. As Grand Chief Dave Cushing points out, it was a commemoration because he acknowledged that the First Nations folks did not fare very well with the signings of the treaties, but they did want to document the events that took place during that year. So we sort of had a convoluted way of locating Mr. McCaughey, which involved calls to North Dakota. It's trying to sort of source him. He didn't have an online presence, so he wasn't easy to locate. But the long and the short of it is that we did find him, and he didn't have it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so he didn't have it. He remembered it. He's a super cool guy, and he definitely remembered it. But he no longer was living in his home that he had at the time. He doesn't have the business anymore, so he didn't have access to the stuff that he was producing back in the day. But interestingly, he did recall the events of the signing of Wahbung, and he remembered that the government was involved. So in the capacity of like the National Film Board, or I think it was basically like Indian Affairs and the National Film Board also showed up to film their own version of events. It's unclear whether they were using some of Mr. McCaughey's footage or if they were shooting their own. I think it was a combination of both now that I look back at it. But so he recalled that the government was involved, and they had created another film called Rivers, Manitoba, because Rivers was the name of the general area which Wahbung, the signing took place at, the presentation.
Right.
So
and just to clarify, the Wahbung paper was presented to Jean Chrétien.
Yes, it was presented to Jean Chrétien, who's the Minister of Indian Affairs at the time, and that took place at Rivers. Yeah, Rivers is what they call it. So we had this clue that now there was this other film called Rivers, and it was like the worst name for a film because it's just literally the name of a town, right? So trying to search out any information on Rivers, Manitoba is just
the
like
film.
It's like doesn't exist. But actually there was a reference to it online, and it included a name of a director who was like, I think her name was Barbara Shaw. And some Googling information on her, I found out that she was employee of Indian Affairs at the time. It seemed like she was running their media department. So she was given credit for this film. And it existed, like it seemed like it was cataloged in the way that the Wahbung Our Tomorrows film was not. And so I was able to locate Rivers, Manitoba, just randomly. Searched every other possible database, university. I'd found a lot of other materials that way, which was actually really good because I'd located a lot of old newspaper articles. There was this old newspaper called the Indian News. I found old annual reports from the Manitoba Indian Brotherhood with a lot of photographs and stuff. So I did end up locating a lot of information just on these like secondary sort of like wild goose chases. But the discovery of this library archives was totally new to me, and they had a really great like searchable database, and I was able to just like literally just type it in and find it. So it was really easy. And I was kind of disappointed by that, to tell you the truth, like because in my mind, like I didn't want to discover like this film like in this digital format, but they did have it. So, and we could just like basically order a copy of it, and they would send it to us, and you know, the terms of the copyright were arranged where we were allowed to utilize some of the film clips in the project that we were developing, but we were not allowed to distribute Rivers, Manitoba, because it is not owned by us. So they did send it to us, and weirdly, it was like missing the ending. It showed basically the presentation of Wahbung with the different chiefs presenting the different topic areas to Jean Chrétien, but it was missing the ending. Like there was just like nothing there. So we were like wondering if there was like a, you know, maybe they didn't want us to see that. Maybe there was something on there that was like, you know, not for public consumption. But we did contact the folks we were dealing with, and they said, yeah, you're right, we missed a whole section of this film, and sent it to us. And we were very happy about that because it was a really awesome sort of strong-worded exchange between Grand Chief Dave Cruchain and then Jean Chrétien's response. All footage that we definitely absolutely used in our short documentary that we produced. So that was great. It was a great find. Mm-hmm. And we never would have known about it at all. You know, like nobody knew about it really. Like I guess theoretically people knew about it, but nobody mentioned it. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So it was a great discovery, but it was still left us lacking because we didn't have the main film that we sought out in the first place, which was Wahbung Our Tomorrows. And you know, I know that we were talking about how we basically went to Facebook.
Yes. Yes, we did. Yeah. Which is one of my roles here as well, to do the social media. So yeah, we decided to put the call out to anyone.
Yeah, because we have a good following of people on our Facebook account. Like we have people from all over Manitoba. And I think that was the right move. And it was the right move in the end, because we got a lot of response to that. We posted the original article that we found from the newspaper as our main clue. And people got back to us. They kind of gave us information we already knew about. But there was one person who just was like, I remember seeing some films in a closet, you know? and I was like, this sounds very promising. I really like, because in my mind, the idea of like finding the film, like the original 16mm film in like a trunk in a basement was like how I wanted to.
That's how you envisioned, yeah.
That's how I envisioned it. Like it wasn't clicking on an online database. So I was really excited. I was like, this sounds good. And so I called the community where it was located, or where the clue was leading.
The closet was.
The closet. And they weren't too sure. They didn't think that it was in there. But I convinced them to let me come up and check it out. And sure enough, I found it. I found 2 copies of it. I actually found 3. I found 2 copies, and I found 1 empty film canister.
Oh,
so it was labeled, but there's no film inside. And then 2 copies, one with a handwritten note on it, which had a misspelling of Wahbung to Wahbung, and some other information. So I was really excited about that. Yeah. It was really great. And I was able to borrow the original films and take them to somebody here in the city who could restore them and digitize them so that we would be able to watch it. You know, I don't have a 16 millimeter film projector. I don't know anybody who does. So, yeah, it was exciting. And so it turns out that we do have it. Like, we have the film. It's amazing.
You found it, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we are missing like a tiny section of it because basically the 2 film reels had to be combined together and one section was damaged. So it's kind of like this opening sequence with Grand Chief Dave Crashane presumably talking. And after talking to Bill McCaughey about that scene, he suspects it was only like maybe 1 minute long. So, you know, I still kind of want to find another version because I basically want like a complete, it's kind of like it's almost complete, but it's not quite, but it's still really good. The footage in it is amazing. So we ended up using all of it basically as B-roll in our 22-minute short documentary. Yeah,
which I'll have you talk about now. So Kathy and Janet approached you, and it's become this wonderful documentary that you've produced.
Yeah,
so it
did change focus. Like, I think when Kathy and Janet first approached us, you know, their idea was really to sort of follow the acknowledgement of the women, and the proposed title was The Women of Wahbung. So that was kind of like the way that we were approaching it. And then with the discovery of the archival footage, and also sort of like the thoughts around the fact that maybe people don't really know about Wahbung, you know? Like there isn't a Wikipedia entry on Wahbung, just for an example. Like, I think it's known in the community of people who are educators and perhaps some of the people who were around back in the day, but I don't necessarily know that like people are really know about it. So we decided to shift the focus a little bit on the documentary that we were creating and actually provide a little bit of that historical information. So to give a little bit of background and understanding, why was Wahbung created? You know, who was involved? What were the reasons of this? So we interviewed some of the key players involved. So that was Verna Kirkness, Janet Fontaine, and Jocelyn Briere.
Grand Chief Derek Niedermann
is
in there.
And we got the son of Dave Crashane Sr., his son Dave Crashane Jr. So he's a very respected elder, and he was really good for providing insight because he was around then too. He worked at the Manitoba Indian Brotherhood. So we had these great people who were able to provide us sort of like the story of the time, you know, the events that were happening at the time, the landscape, the political landscape, all these things that were able, you know, to build this story. And the ability to include the archival footage to show, to really like take you as the viewer back to the time, and not only see it but also hear it. Because, for instance, Dave Crashane Sr., you know, he's delivering these speeches and they're really powerful. And what he's saying in 1971 is like totally relevant today. It's absolutely relevant. So the film that we found, Wahbung Our Tomorrows, is on our YouTube page, and I would encourage everybody to watch it because it's a really important part of, you know, First Nations history, but also just like in Manitoba too. Like I feel like it's just like everybody should see this. So the fact that they went to the trouble to do this, like they shot like 22,000 feet of film. That's what it said in that article. So it was just like a huge amount of, and I would love to find the original film. Yes. Like, I mean, if that existed somewhere, I would like lose my mind. It would be so cool. But basically what we got was the edited final version. And, yeah, it's just, I think it's just a really important discovery. And that was like really important for us to be able to gain the copyright on that so that we can share it. And that really was the purpose of it, was to make sure that it was available and it's on YouTube and everybody can see it, you know. So we'll link to that, I think, in the information for this podcast. So the listeners can click and then watch it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And now the documentary you created. Is it finished, and when will it be available?
It's so close. Like it's really close to being finished. It just is like in the final sound revision stages right now. And we do have a date set for a local premiere. So it's going to be March 2nd.
Oh, okay.
And it'll be at Cinematech. So I know that's like a couple months away, but that will be something that we're hyping up, because the other part of this too is that like we didn't abandon the book idea.
Right, of course. Yeah.
And that we are still producing a document to go along with this film. And it will also include a teacher's guide. So it will have a DVD with our documentary included in it. So that's something that we are also developing right now too. So that still has to go to the printers. And I think that basically by the time everything is sort of organized, we will be able to present it to the public at that time. And maybe we'll have it for sale on our website or something before that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like our goal for really like showing it. And we showed a few unfinished versions of it to Chiefs Assembly last week, and we showed it at our conference in October, Circle of Knowledge, and it's had a really great response. Like I think people are really engaged, and especially it's interesting because a lot of people, will say, oh, like I was there. Like there's the events of the centennial that they held at Lower Fort Garry, and so that's included in the archival footage, and a lot of people recall being there at the time. And also interestingly, like we've recognized people in the film who are like coworkers of ours who are like children in the film, and they recognize themselves. So wow. It's interesting for people have recognized like their relatives, their grandparents, who were being honored, So, like I think it just is really interesting for a lot of different people to see.
And something they can be very proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, it was, I think definitely like when you look at, the vision of the leaders at that time, it is really quite astounding. So, I was very happy to be part of this project, and I was pleased that it went in the direction it did. I feel like it was just very unexpected.
Absolutely.
And not every day does I feel like there's like a mystery that needs to be solved. Yeah. So the fact that this did have this sort of like interesting twist to it, I think makes it even more important.
yeah, I think so too. And one thing I also love is, even though it ended up not being just focused on the women of Wahbung, that's still a huge
absolutely. We didn't abandon that at all. Like we basically, what we wanted to do was sort of like tie these themes together.
Yes.
So we wanted to tell the story, but we wanted to still honor the people who were instrumental in creating it. And so the history, is one part of it. We also wanted to acknowledge Grand Chief Dave Crushane for his leadership and vision. And then, the women, that was huge because they Janet Fontaine says in the documentary, she's like, without the help of a lot of the women who are in like the support administrative positions, it never would have been done. Mm-hmm. Like it never would have been completed, because they were the ones who were putting in the, it's like typewriters. Yeah. Right? Like they joke in the movie about how their Xerox machine broke down and that they were up until 6 a.m, like the day before. Like it was crazy. Like they didn't have computers and printers, right? So the people, the women who were involved, it was like they, at the time too, it was just kind of like the beginning of like the feminist movement, and all these different things were happening. So we absolutely, we spend a large portion of the film actually acknowledging the women involved. At the time, it was the first female chief in Manitoba had just been elected, so Jean Falster, and she was selected to actually present the culture aspect of Wahbung to Jean Chrétien. So that was like huge, right? That was like the shift that was taking place that never had happened before. So we definitely focus on that. And then I think, the main sort of takeaway message too in the end is like, why is this important to revisit? What is the message of Wahbung? Why is this something that we need to still think about? I guess you got to watch the film, but we talk about it, right? Like it's definitely impactful, I think, as just a reminder of our history and First Nations people's history. So yeah,
absolutely. And there will also be a website accompanying it, or a web page.
Yep, there's going to be a web page.
Yeah.
Yep, so we're setting it up. It is ourtomorrowsfilm.com. And we'll link to it through our MFNERC site, but it will have more specific information about the film. So once we sort of dial down any showings of the film, if we send it out anywhere, if it's going to be screened, all that information and some of the information too regarding like the people who we interviewed, the people involved in creating it, some of the backstory, like the story that I just told you regarding some of the research, and a trailer too, which we're still working on, but that'll be done right away.
Okay.
Yeah. So all that information will be on the website, and we're really hoping that we get some feedback and hear what people have to say about this.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's an amazing story of how it came about, I think so.
Oh, thanks.
I think people will be very interested and to keep following the story, as more people learn about Wahbung and the history. So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to say about the film or your work on it? Or?
I don't know. I mean, it was in a really great process. Like I feel like I would like to tackle more of these types of projects. Like perhaps there's other unearthed mysteries to delve into. Like I think it would be worthwhile. It's like talk to people and see what's out there, because it wasn't really that hard to find this film. Like it seems like it sort of was, but not really. I mean, I didn't really have to I only had to leave technically my computer at one point. There wasn't a whole lot of actual legwork involved. So I'd be game for maybe there's something else out there.
So then anyone listening, if you have something in the back of your mind that's, wait a minute, I remember seeing or hearing something about that, you can contact us.
Yeah. Maybe it's a story that we could team up and tell, some cool historical information, or who knows. I mean, I bet there's a lot out there. I bet people have a lot of stories to tell, and I'd be game to hear about them for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome.
So the only thing is that our documentary, won't actually be available for viewing online just yet.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, it will be on a DVD, and that DVD will be available in a resource that we will have available on our online store, which is mfnerc.com, the store.
The shop.
Sorry.
Yes.
The shop. Yes. And so once we figure out what we're doing with it, we're going to see if there is anybody interested in broadcasting it. And that just sort of prevents us from actually sharing it for free at this point. But it will be available. It'll happen. I would just say, connect with us on social media, and we'll keep you informed as far as what's happening and dates and possible viewings and whatever. Yeah. So
there will be ways to see it.
There will be ways. Sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It just might not be on YouTube.
Right.
But the original archival film is
on YouTube.
Yeah.
So go and watch it.
So check that out. Yes, because it's very cool. Yeah. I'd love to hear back from people on that for sure.
Yeah. Okay, great. So thank you, Nicole, so much for being here. It was so wonderful to chat with you about your project and learn more about Wahbung. And we look forward to the premiere in March.
Great. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.